Joining us now to talk more about UCF's Cure Bowl opponent, the Arkansas State Red Wolves, is Troy Schulte, who covers the school for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Troy, how are you?
Good, man. How you doing today?
Good. Thank you for joining us. It was a tale of two seasons for Arkansas State, an 0-4 start to the year. Then the Red Wolves won 6 straight, 7 of 8 to finish atop the Sun Belt for the 5th time in 6 seasons. Tell us how this season played out.
Well, this is my 4th year covering the team, and this was probably by far the oddest, kind of season in terms of just kind of, they've dealt with a bunch of coaching searches and stuff, but outside of that, just kind of the in-game part of the season is probably the one that kind of included the most twists and turns. They entered the season with a bunch of, they had about half of a new coaching staff. Their whole offensive staff was new. And they were breaking in a bunch of new skill players. They had all their offensive line back and 2 running backs back, but all their receivers and their quarterbacks were new. And it just took them a little while to really get into any type of a rhythm. They lost to Toledo and Auburn and Utah State, and then the big one that really got people restless was losing to Central Arkansas, which is an in-state FCS team, and they ended up having a good year. They went to the second round of the FCS playoffs, but losing, a home game to an in-state FCS team is never really going to be something that fans accept. So, they ended up making a quarterback change in the Utah State game, and that kind of got them a little bit on track, but offensively they never really found a great rhythm, but their defense has been good. They haven't forced as many turnovers as they did last year, but they've been better in just about every other area. It's a very veteran defense, very sound. So, they were able to, kind of win some games backed by their defense while their offense has really kind of gotten into gear, which has at times, has not at times. So that's about where we're at, and that's kind of the team that's probably going to be playing on the 17th. It's a very flawed team, but it's a capable team on offense and a very sound team on defense. So that's basically what they've turned into.
All right, you mentioned it a little while ago. Losing to Auburn is one thing, but losing to Central Arkansas is kind of another. How did that happen?
Well, it was a combination of, I'll start with the quarterbacks. Last year when they went 9-4 and won the Sun Belt and went to the New Orleans Bowl, they had a 2-year starter, a quarterback. His name was Freddie Knighton. He led 2 years, starting there. He was, they set a school record and a conference record for points scored. He was, he's in the top 5 in all the schools, most of the school's quarterback categories, just had a really good career. They lost him, and they also lost their offensive coordinator, Walt Bell. He went from Arkansas State to Maryland, and not only had he been there for Anderson's 2 years, him and Anderson had known each other. Blake Anderson, the head coach I'm talking about, had known each other all the way back to the Middle Tennessee days. Blake Anderson was his coach at Middle Tennessee, and then, he had him at several stops along the way, along with North Carolina, and he brought Arkansas State. So they're very close, and they're very in sync with the offense. And so Walt Bell goes to Maryland. They lose their quarterback. They lose a bunch of receivers. He brings in Buster Faulkner to be an offensive coordinator from Middle Tennessee, and, it just was a little clunky to start through the first month. They pick one quarterback, Chad Voidick, who's a graduate transfer from Pittsburgh. He didn't get there until June. So you got a quarterback starting who has been on campus for only 3 or 4 months with a new offensive coordinator, and it just did not work very well. And in the middle of the Utah State game, they made a change at quarterback to Justice Hansen, which you guys will see on the 17th, but he's new too. He was a transfer from a junior college. He started his career at Oklahoma. But he didn't get there till January. So all these new pieces trying to fit together, and that UCA game, they turned it over 4 times. And like I said, UCA was a very sound team. They're a very good team and an experienced team. And it's the type of team that if, you have all those things working against you, like, all these new pieces on offense, if you turn it over 4 times, they turned it over twice in the fourth quarter when they were driving, when they could have, kind of sealed the game. All those things working against you against a team that's very sound and very well coached and experienced and good, that's the type of game that can get you, and it got him. And, Blake Anderson says now that, he didn't like going through that, but he says now that might have been the catalyst for their season, which, it's hard to really judge if that's true or not. But, after that, they won 6 in a row and 7 of 8, and that's where they're at now.
Tell us more about the Red Wolves offense, starting with redshirt sophomore quarterback Justice Hansen, and who will his key targets be at wide receiver?
Yeah, like I mentioned, he's new to the program. He's from Oklahoma. He started at Oklahoma. transferred to a junior college in Kansas just because he probably was never going to get the opportunity there. And then he got to ASU in January. He's a little bit different than Freddie Knight that they had before. He has more of the traditional kind of passer tools, if that makes sense. He's a little bit taller. He's got a bigger arm. He can run a little bit, but he's not. If you see a play breakdown, you see him take off, you can tell it's not his greatest asset. But he can do it. He can kind of, if you need 4 yards, he can get you 5 every once in a while. But he's got he's got a big arm. He can throw it downfield a lot more than they have in the past. So that helps. But accuracy has been a thing for him. He's only 58%, almost 59%. And there are times where just kind of short and intermediate routes, kind of medium type routes, have been an issue for him. And that's just going to take time with his growth. I think he started last year, but it was at a junior college. It's just a completely different ball game. So. You've seen him at times be pretty good and pretty dynamic, and you can see why that he's got something here. But you can see times where kind of looks like he's not entirely sure what's going on. So, and that's been the case since September. So, it's a thing where it's probably just going to take probably a spring and an off season to really kind of see huge jumps with him. And then in terms of his targets, those were a lot of new pieces too. Tight end Blake Mack had a breakout year. He's leading them in yards. And then he'll throw to Kendall Sanders, who came from Texas, and Cameron Eccles-Looper, who was transferred from TCU. And both of those guys kind of came on late more so than they did early. So he's got a few targets to throw to. Warren Wand, a sophomore running back, he's their biggest, kind of threat in the running game. He averaged almost 5 yards a carry. So they've got pieces. It's just like I've been saying. They've been new all year and just trying to really mesh together throughout this season.
Well, the running game was my next question. It's ranked 102nd this season in FBS. Who are the playmakers running the ball, and tell us more about the offensive line?
The offensive line has been one of the biggest. I don't know if I want to label it as a disappointment, but it's been one of the more inconsistent units all year. it came in, every other piece on the offense was new, but except for the offensive line, they're starting 5 seniors, and they've had a couple minor injuries throughout the year, but for the most part, they've started 5 seniors every game. And the fact that running game hasn't been something that they can really lean on has really kind of hampered them offensively. I mean, they're averaging less than 4 yards a carry. I mean, a lot of that has to do with sacks and whatnot, but it just hasn't been as dynamic as it has been in the past. And we've kind of peppered them with questions about that all year and can never really get a clear answer as to why they think that. You would think that an offensive line that was able to do what it did last year would be able to do the same. So I think it's just a kind of combination of, just kind of not really in sync with a new coordinator and a new philosophy. The offense in general isn't all that different. It's just kind of, they have a new offensive line coach and a new running backs coach. Like I said, it's basically an all-new offensive staff. So just trying to gel all season together, I think that's something that has been kind of a trouble for them. So, but Warren Wand had probably his best game of the season the other night at Texas State. He had 130 yards rushing and 60 yards receiving. He had almost 200 yards of total offense. So if that's the type of guy they can get moving forward and on the 17th, then that's a pretty good start for them.
Shifting to defense, the Red Wolves were ranked 42nd overall, pretty consistent on both sides of the ball. Tell us more about the defensive standouts and who could cause the Knights problems.
It's an experienced defense. I guess I don't know offhand in terms of seniors and juniors, but it's pretty much all juniors and seniors. They have a starting nickelback that's a sophomore, but other than that, it's guys that have been around, that have played, that have started. And, at the beginning of the year, Blake Anderson said, we're really going to need this defense to be great to kind of lean on it while this offense comes around. It took them a while. It took them almost to even the Georgia Southern game that really got their kind of winning on track. Numbers-wise, it wasn't great, but since then they've been really good. And, like I said, they haven't had as many turnovers as they forced last year, but just about every other area is improved. And, I think it starts a lot with its front four. It's guys up front. Waylon Robertson, he's a big tackle that isn't going to have a lot of numbers, but coaches mention him every week, either ASU coaches or opponent coaches, in terms of just kind of disrupting things. And they've got 2 ends that have really broken out. Chris Odom, who might end up being the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year, he had 12.5 sacks, and the guy on the other side, Javon Roland Jones, had 11.5. And the thing with him was, Javon Rowland-Jones has always been a great pass rusher. He's a junior. It's his third year. He's always been great in that area. But he's had trouble staying on the field because, he wasn't all that great or as good, doing as well as the coaches wanted him to do in, kind of stopping the run and some of the other stuff. Well, he's doing that now, so he's on the field all the time, and he's able to kind of make some of those tackles for loss and sacks that he's really good at. So that front four is really getting after it, and that just helps everything in the back. They've got two experienced linebackers and experienced safeties, and they're really playing well right now.
Talk to us about the job that head coach Blake Anderson has done as he hopes to guide the Red Wolves to their first bowl win during his tenure.
The bowl wins is something that, he's talked about here in the last couple of days since it's been clear where they're going, that it seems pretty important to him, because like you said, that first year they lost to Toledo. Last year they lost to Louisiana Tech and New Orleans, and neither of them were really all that close. And so I think that's important to him just in general, just to kind of get that bowl win off his back and just kind of have something that he can point to because, if you look at it, ASU has been successful. 6 years in a row, they've been to bowl games, 5 of the last 6 Sun Belt titles. He's 23-15 in 3 years as a coach. But if you kind of split it up, they have not been very successful outside of the conference. He is 1-11 against out-of-conference FBS schools since he's been there. That only win was an overtime win against Utah State at home his first year. Beyond that, it's he's lost 3 times to Toledo. They've lost to Tennessee and Miami and Auburn and Louisiana Tech last year. UCA, like we talked about before. They just have not been able to translate this to outside the conference. So I think that's big. This game is big in that area for them. A lot of times it comes down to bowl games come down to motivation. So I think that will at least give the staff quite a bit of motivation just to prove that they can do it. They're kind of in that period where they're known as a great Sun Belt program, but it's time for them to really kind of make that next jump and show that they can compete outside the Sun Belt, and this is a good opportunity for them to do that.
What reaction are you hearing from the Red Wolves fans about a trip to Orlando for the Cure Bowl?
It's a little half and half. People are excited to go to Orlando because it's a city they've never been to. I don't think ASU's played there since the 50s. So current fans have never been there. They've never been to the game, to this bowl game. But it's a flight. It's just a little bit further of a drive. And it's a little bit different than the other bowls they've been to, which were in Mobile for 4 years, which was a drive from either Jonesboro or Little Rock or wherever. Or New Orleans, which is also a drive. So that's kind of the disappointment thing that they've said. It's a flight. It's a little bit more of a commitment, but I think the people that are able to make the trip are pretty excited about it.
I would be excited about it if I wasn't from this area. Do your fans travel?
I'm going, and I'm excited about it. I've never been there.
Do your fans travel well normally?
The bowl games they have been recently. It's hard to gauge, just kind of a number because they never really have a hard one, but they had really good showings in Mobile, and last year in New Orleans it was pretty good. But it'll be interesting to see because, like I said, it's either a 12-hour drive or it's a flight. So either it's a little bit more of a time and a money commitment. So I think I talked to this about their athletic director about this the other day. I don't think I put it in my story, but just it's almost a challenge with the fan base just to see where their kind of level of commitment is. If they can get fans to this, then that's a pretty good showing in terms of kind of where they think the program is and where they feel how they feel about the program currently.
Thank you very much, man, for giving us a little insight into Arkansas State, and we look forward to having a good game and a great bowl week and all that stuff down here in Orlando.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'll see you down there. Thanks for having me. I'll see you down there. Thanks for having